Continue. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, shehakol niyeh b'dvarei.
Amen.
L'chaim, everybody. L'chaim, bracha. Welcome to the sixth, wow, and final lesson. It's only final in the teachings, but the finale will be that we carry this forward. And therefore, there's no finale, as we will see. So if you recall, in the previous lesson, we spoke about Or Ein Soif. As great and as lofty as the Or Ein Soif is, it's not God himself. As we explained, it's God's manifestation of his infinity. And inasmuch as I love the concept of infinity, because as some of you might know, I could speak infinitely long. And now that you've locked the doors and no one can go anywhere, can try me on for size.
He controls all your electronics.
Yeah, but now he doesn't control my mouth. Yet, there is something greater than infinity. Because the very name Or Ein Sof, what does it mean? The infinite light. But really what it translates as the light that has no end. Is that true infinity?
No, because it implies it has a beginning.
It implies that it has a beginning. Exactly. Right. So why do we call it Or Ein Sof if it's endless? Why not describe it as beginningless? So the Alter Rebbe explains. Let us turn to page 177, text number 1. We refer to God's light as Ein Sof without end, instead of Ein Loi Techila without a beginning. This preference appears puzzling, because essentially there's no difference. Anything that has no beginning also has no end, as is known. The truth is that if we intend to refer to God's very essence, it would indeed be appropriate to use the phrase Ein Loi Techila without a beginning. However, what we describe in Ein Sof is in fact God's light and radiance and not God himself. Is that clear? God's light and radiance, but not God himself. To clarify, when the Kabbalists speak of the Or Ein Sof, their intention is the endless light of God, not the light of the endless one. They are not attempting to describe the origin of the light as endless, for we cannot describe God himself as endless. So, let's see if we can do this simply and easily. Let me know. No. What do we have there? All right, let us see if we can do better. Give me a moment. Let's see if this will work better. Yes. And what's that now? Me. Still challenged.
The screen loves you.
Oh, 1 second. Oh, I think the problem is that I didn't do this. Where? My apologies, folks. Where'd you go? Where?
This one. This one.
No.
No, unshare and reshare. Wait. No, unshare, reshare.
This bounces around. Ah, now screen 2. Oh, I think we got it. But why is it not here showing? Oops. Alt, go ahead. All right. Okay. So something that is Ein Sof is without end could have a beginning point. An example, angels. There are angels that live forever. Or Ein Sof extends indefinitely, infinitely so. But it has a beginning. God himself, the very essence of God, in Chassidus is known as Atzmus, essence. The essence of God from which all else emerges. So with here we come to the difference between God and godliness. In every class till now, in the beginning classes, we spoke about creation. Then we spoke about godliness, God's last name. And God's last name, right, had the 10 divine attributes. But from there we went further to Or Ein Sof, right, which is a limitless, but it is still in the realm of godliness. They're all expressions of God. Here we are now speaking about Atzmus, the essence of God. So in today's lesson, we're going to have a difficult task. Because when you speak about Atzmus, really, you can't speak so much about what it is, but what, in fact, it isn't, as we will see, for the most part, right? In other words, when we can speak about Ein Sof, so we can speak about God's infinite quality as it expresses it in his infinite will. We can speak about his limited qualities as it's defined with the 10 divine attributes, right? But how do we describe Atzmus, which ultimately everything in existence comes from? So let's look at text number 2. The Rebbe Rashab says, every title is a description, an attempt to describe something about a particular entity. It follows that the recipient of the title is an entity with a degree of definition or limitation that lends itself to description. Now, none of this is true of God's essence. And we are left without any form of name or title by which to refer to him. Our knowledge of Atzmus is limited to the fact that he creates. Consequently, we have no way to refer to Atzmus other than to describe him as creator. Because there is no name that would do Atzmus justice. So we speak of him, of his essence. Essence. So the first point, as we're saying, there's no description that can contain. So there's no positive definition. Oh, it's moving here, but not moving here. Aha. Okay. Oh no, here it's not moving, so it's not connected to the same place.
What's this? Again.
Sorry, folks, I didn't realize that it wasn't moving here while I was. Look at this. It doesn't. Where are you? Go ahead. There. Okay. And what are you seeing on whatchamacallit? All right, we're good. All right. Sorry, folks. All right. Here we are. Undefined. Now, in the last 5 weeks, we have been speaking about one level climbing up to the next level, right? We started about clothing, self-expression, thought, speech, and action. Then we went to the powers of the soul, right? What was that in the creation? 3 worlds. And then we went to Atzilus, which is the 10 divine attributes. From Atzilus, then we went to even higher, to Ein Sof, as we explained, right? Each level begat another level. We might think when we're speaking about the essence of God, Atzmus, if we're going to use the term, that it is just another rung in the ladder. Not at all. Not at all. There's a qualitative difference, infinitely removed. Because everything that we spoke about till now is all sourced in God. Everything, therefore, once it's sourced in God, it becomes then a link in the chain, which we described, that Seder Hishtalshalus. And therefore, it has a position in the map. Atzmus is nowhere and everywhere at the same time, but it's not on the map, if you will. Okay? So the most fundamental thing about Atzmus is that it has no beginning. What does that mean? Has no beginning. Means no, because Ein Sof is infinite. It's a light that's infinite, but it has a beginning. What does it mean something doesn't have a beginning? It means it necessarily has to exist. As opposed to everything else that has a beginning, doesn't necessarily have to exist. In Hebrew, the term is mechuyev hametzius. He has to be, right? But anything that comes from him doesn't necessarily have to be. Why? It had a beginning. God doesn't. That puts, when we speak about Atzmus, in a whole different category completely. In other words, everything else is contingent on something that brings it into being, except Atzmus. Not contingent on anything necessary. He must be. Therefore, he has no cause. Is that clear? So 2 points so far. First is, he has no definition whatsoever. Even Or Ein Sof has a definition. It's infinite. That's a definition. Represents heavenly desire. That's a definition. Second point that we're making now, it's the only entity that necessarily exists. Nothing else has to be. Is that clear?
Can you repeat that, Rabbi? Sorry.
Everything else has a beginning, therefore it doesn't have to be. Atzmus has no beginning. Necessarily, he must be. Okay? Is that clear? Another important point about Atzmus. He's not bound by any rules. Why is that? Why is he not bound by any rules? No. Rules have a beginning. Where are the beginning? He made the rules. He made the rules. So he's not bound by the rules. He's beyond the rules. He made the rules. Now, in our experience and perception, some rules seem to be like they must just be, right? For example, pi is the ratio of the circle's circumference, right? The diameter is approximately 3.14159, just approximate, right? That's a rule that must be for us, right? Anything that goes up must come down. Yesterday precedes today, correct? All those are rules that Atzmos does not abide by. They're non-binding for him. He created them. In our perspective, they seem to be, a fact of creation. But from his perspective, Al-Atzmos, no. All of that is something that he set into motion, that he made it, put it in, that has a beginning to it. Since it has a beginning, he doesn't. He's beyond it. He created that rule, and therefore he's not bound by that rule. Right? And let's take it even a step further. Our natural notion is that God is infinite. Right? We spoke about the world of Biyah, Bria, Yitzir, and Asiyah. They are finite, limited worlds. Even Atzilus, even though it's godly, it's also finite. Then we got into Or Ein Sof, infinite and unlimited. But what about Atzmos? So we'd also think, so it's what, a greater infinity? Like Or Ein Sof is infinite, has a beginning, but it's infinite from that point on. So then Atzmos is just even a greater form of infinity, if you will. A mistake. By Atzmos, infinite and finite are both the same thing, no distinction. Why? Because infinity is a description. A description is a definition. A definition is a delimiter. You can't say that about Atzmos.
Rabbi, you refer to Atzmot as he, but isn't Atzmot the essence of Hashem?
Just we have to, I'm not calling him they. Okay, because that would be idolatrous. But you're right. It's not a he. It's not a he or a she. There's no name. Exactly. But we have to speak in human terminology. So that's why I said I'm not going to call him a they, right? That I'm not going to do because that would be bordering on idolatry, right? So you're right, but that's even that is incorrect. Absolutely correct. Okay. So text number 3 from the Rebbe. In truth, even infinity does not express Atzmos. Rather, God's essence is neither finite nor infinite. The qualities of infinity and finitude apply exclusively to divine revelation. Atzmos is beyond that, right? In other words, we speak about God revealing himself in an infinite way, and we speak about God revealing himself in a finite way. Infinite way is Or Ein Sof, finite way is Atzilus, right? The 10 divine attributes. But that's not Atzmos, that's not the essence The essence is beyond that. It's the essence is beyond that, right? So if you remember when we spoke, we gave an example of Newton, right? Isaac Newton. So when he is his infinite brain, when he wanted to bring a finite, teachings to a high school student or to a 5-year-old, he has to put aside his infinite, metaphorically speaking, brain in order to allow a little piece of that brain to express itself in a very finite, limited manner, right? That's what he needed to do. There had to be a tzimtzum, if you remember, we spoke about last week, to put the infinite aside to make room for the finite. But that's all in the revelation of godliness, but not in God himself, in the essence of God. Right? Is that clear? Are you with us, young lady? You look to be very distracted.
Yeah, I'm sorry, because
You'll worry about it later because it's not going to come up right now. Until you worry about it later. And if you could do that, I promise you, it'll be okay. So what this gives birth to an interesting concept. It's called nimna hanimnois, which means the impossibility of the impossible. That can only be ascribed to Atzmus. In other words, everything that we know, even Or Ein Sof, works within a structure, within a framework, with a set of rules. Even the infinite, it's got a set of rules. It's infinite, not finite. That's why you have to push away the infinite to make room for the finite, right? Newton has to put away his unbelievable ideas so he can bring down a simple thing for the 5-year-old. That's a rule, right? In order to do that, there's a structure for that. There's something logical, rational, makes sense. So we understand that within the revelation of godliness. We get that. But when it comes to Atzmus, that's different. Where do we have an example of Atzmus in this world that defies the rules of nature, for example? It's a holy ark that contained the luches, the tablets, that was in the Holy of Holies, in the holy temple. So we have over here, the Holy of Holies was 20 cubits if you measure it from one end to the other end, right, in the width. The Ark of the Covenant took 2.5 cubits, right? You measured it. It took up space. It was there, right? At the same time, if you measured from one side to the other, it was 10 cubits and 10 cubits, which means if you measured it completely, so you've got 22.5, yet the space was only 20 if you measured from wall to wall. So in other words, it took up space because it took up the 2.5 cubits, right? And at the same time, it didn't take up space. That's what we call nimnam nimnois, the impossible to happen, right? The impossible of an impossibility that to say it doesn't take up space is one thing, but to say at the same time it does take up space, right, is a complete paradox, a complete contradiction. That can't exist in the rule book of creation. It can only exist as an expression of Atzmus, right? In other words, if this was an expression of Or Ein Sof, then it would be limitless. Then it would be like it doesn't take up space, right? But here we're saying, in fact, it does take up space and doesn't at the same time. That's an expression of how the finite and the infinite, how space and no space come together as one. Only Atzmus can do that, and that's only done in the Holy of Holies. In other words, this is expressing how God himself can transcend any definition, any expression, any rule that he sets in nature. He sets rules in nature, and those rules, 99.9% of the times need to be obeyed, right? But not when it comes to Atzmus. The rules of infinity and the rules of finitude have no bearing. Being that he is the source of the rule and therefore beyond them. Is that clear? Yeah. This is very heavy stuff, has been throughout the course, but if you follow this and the logic behind all of it, it's remarkable what we're going to come up with here. Let's go even a step further. Now, this, although it's not intuitive about, the ark taking space and not taking space is one thing. But let's take it a step further. We'll see that this idea is not just a philosophical idea that seems to be maybe irrelevant. Because after all, who hangs out in the Holy of Holies of late? And even when we had the Holy of Holies, only the high priest went in there, the Kohen Gadol. So what relevance does it have to me? But let me tell you, it has great relevance, and let me explain. The rules of morality, right and wrong, holy and unholy, is God bound by them? He's not bound by being holy? He's not bound by being moral? Why not?
He defines.
Because he defined it. Exactly. He created them. With this, we can make sense of a seemingly bizarre medrash. Look at text number 4 on page 186. From the start of the universe's creation, God foresaw the deeds of the righteous and the deeds of the wicked. As it is stated, God knows the ways of the righteous and the way of the wicked that is doomed. This was represented at the start of creation as follows. The earth was chaotic and desolate. This refers to the deeds of the wicked. God declared, let there be light. This refers to the deeds of the righteous. However, the narrative has yet to clarify the genre of deeds that God desires. Is it these or those? This is clarified in the following verse. God saw the light was good. Clearly, God desires the deeds of the righteous and does not desire the deeds of the wicked. It sounds as if God could have chosen, he could have desired the deeds of the wicked. Could he? Absolutely. The concept of good and evil did not exist before God created them. They didn't exist. He decided everything in creation. Even the moral standard of creation is something that he creates. Therefore, in other words, let's make it clearer. God started with a blank slate, with a blank piece of paper, and he decided, this is moral, this is immoral, this is right, and this is wrong. Right? That's how it was. So it's ultimately his freedom of choice. Nothing else, nothing compelled him. Nothing compelled him to choose one thing over the other. With this, we have another concept over here, bechira chavshis, which means free choice. A choice that originates completely from within the chooser and not compelled, even in the slightest, by any external consideration. Think about it for a moment. The choices that we make are definitely compelled to some degree by outside considerations. And even if it's me choosing because how I feel about something, well, why am I feeling that way? Probably because of some outside consideration. So are you really freely choosing? No. You're compelled on some level. On some level, we're compelled in our choice. Right? Even, sorry, go ahead.
Sounds like you're assuming that God has to make a choice or would make a choice.
Well, he did, because he chose that light is good, the deeds of the righteous is good, what he defines it, and not that of the wicked as he defines it. He chose that because he tells us very clearly, don't serve idolatry, that's wicked. Don't do this, don't do that. No, it just locked the middle door. Okay.
Did that come well after? So
No, he chose it. That's the whole point here. He freely chose what's right and what's wrong. Nothing compelled him. He didn't have a group of advisors, or that there was an experience with something that, my experience shows me that this is good, and another experience shows me that this is bad. And therefore, I'm choosing this. No, there was no experience before, right? To take it a step further, when we speak about God versus godliness, or Ein Sof, right, makes a choice. It's colored. What's it colored by? What's it colored by? Or Ein Sof, when it's choosing, what's it colored by?
Itself.
Well, what's itself? Infinity. It chooses infinity because that's what defines it. So you choose what defines you. Nothing defines God. And therefore, when he chooses, nothing is compelling him. Or in Sof, something does compel. Right? So the true freedom of choice is only in the hands of Atzmos. Absolute free choice. Atzmos chose to desire good over evil, as he chose what's good and what's evil. Is that clear? This is a little mind-bending over here. So you got to really leave the baggage at the door in order that you can get this, because this is totally not at all anything you've heard before in any manner. And therefore, it's really, Yes, sorry, Ari, go ahead. You were saying or asking.
this implies duality consciousness. So in God, there has to be only oneness. So there would be no evil, just like there would be no good, because in oneness, there is only God good, but outside of good, there can be creation, like an individual's going forth, who can then think that there is good or evil because they're coming out of separation. But in oneness, to me, this can't exist.
But that's the point. That's the that's the difference of Atzmos. Atzmos is not defined or has any parameter to it as you think or I think, and therefore this is the way it must be. He is free to choose as he decides, because he has nothing that compels him to choose, because there's nothing defining him, that he must choose something over one thing over another. And when he chooses it freely in the true sense. Okay? So, in other words, you're saying that he must do something, that he must know. He chose, so it is. He chose that, as we'll define this later on. We're taking step by step. We'll see how that expresses itself, right? But again, he is the only entity that has absolute free choice.
So all along, if you think that you want to do good because you want to emulate God, it's not emulating him. It's more doing what he chose.
So you can emulate his kindness. You can emulate his compassion. Those are the limited forms on how we emulate godliness. That's emulating godliness. How do you emulate God himself? Well, we'll get there. Good. We'll get there. Right?
Okay.
Okay. We're good so far? Are we catching on? Okay. Now, so if God made the rules and he's not bound by the rules, even when he makes the rules, he can dispense with the rules. Right? That's why we have the ability of tshuva, of repentance, to repair something, to gain atonement, forgiveness, even if we mess up. Because messing up means we did something that's undesirable to God, right? And this is true regardless how badly we failed and messed up. Text number 5, please. Nothing stands in the way of tshuva, repentance. Even if one denied God's existence throughout their life and then repent in the final moments, their merit a portion in the world to come. Now, how is it that a person that thoroughly disregarded God's rule for 80 years and is able to do tshuva on his deathbed and gain forgiveness? So the Rebbe explains in text number 6. Violations of divine will are felt most keenly by the divine author who scripted that will. On the other hand, God transcends his own will and is not compelled to react to violations in a particular way, for who can tell him, what are you doing? Consequently, through tshuva, which is loftier than all of the mitzvahs, and which touches the innermost depth of God's desire, one can obtain atonement. So what do we have here? The Rebbe is pointing out to an irony, a paradox here, right? Imagine, a boss creates a company and he gives rules and regulation for everybody, what they need to follow in that, and he enforces it. And then an employee disregards the company rule and he hurts and offends. Who's he offending ultimately? The person who put those rules into place, the CEO, the boss, right? Now, that very same boss who set those rules can also set a way to seek clemency, that you can fix and repair what you have done. So God, who set the policy that this is what we need to do in our lives, A, B, and C, when we fail to do it, he also made exceptions to the rule. This is an expression of Atzmus, that he can grant forgiveness. It transcends even God's will, right? Like when the mother tells her 7-year-old daughter, for the next week, I want you to clean your room every day before dinner. And the 7-year-old messes up and doesn't listen to her mother, right? And what does she do? A little girl climbs up in her mother's lap and says, Mommy, I'm sorry that I didn't listen. I'll do better. Who was mommy before that? She was one who has rules and regulations. Mommy with rules and regulations. When she repented, she did tshuva. What did she touch? Mommy who makes rules and regulations? No. She touched a deeper place in her mother, right? Where it can wipe away the wrong that was done, right? A core essence of the relationship between mother and daughter. And therefore, she can be forgiving. Because how are you forgiving? Because you touch a deeper place in the connection between mother and daughter. She's not just the drill sergeant to tell her daughter, or to teach her daughter how to be, appropriate and how to lead an appropriate life. There's a deeper connection. And that is the concept of tshuva. right? Now, that metaphor, we can understand how we reach tshuva because we touch a deeper place in us as we touch a deeper place in God. So, let's go through this. So what we've learned. Lesson 1 was levushim, garments, right? The human makeup, which reflected in the three worlds of Biyah, Bria, Yitzir, and Asiya. Then second lesson was kochot, the powers of the soul, right? Which is 10, which reflects the 10 divine attributes in Atzilus, right? Lesson 3 was Ratzain, was the crown beyond the world, the will of God. Lesson 4, we spoke about the parallel sets, the animal soul, the godly soul, and how the animal soul even comes from a higher place. And lesson 5, we explained Tzimtzum, on how we can come from an infinite God to a finite world, right? In today's lesson, we're speaking about Atzmus. What's the parallel in Atzmus and us? Yechida, the united one, the essence of the soul that's inexorably united with God. That's the parallel in our soul. There's 5 levels of the soul. The lowest level is nefesh, that's related to our behavior, thought, speech, and action. Then we have ruach, which is spirit, which is the emotions. Then we have neshama, which is intelligence. Then we have yechaya, which is will. And now we have yechida, which is the essence of the soul. Right? Those are the 5 levels. Right? At the core of our soul, that's the essence of our soul, it's undefinable. What does it reflect? Our inherent connection to the essence of God. Yechida is connected to Atzmus. Text number 7 from the Rebbe. Together the Jewish people and God form one complete entity, so to speak. This is due to the bond between the very essence of the soul and God's essence. By contrast, while the soul's various expressions and powers also enjoy a relationship with God, the relationship is susceptible to damage as a consequence of a person's choices. The soul's essence is always intimately bound and united with God, in a unity that our sages depict as merged and bonded with you in a oneness to be one with you. That's Yechida. How's that expressed in tshuva? In other words, tshuva means we touch a place in us that's the core essence of us, that touches the core essence of God. So as far as we may have strayed, where does the straying take place? On the other 4 levels of the soul. There can be a straying of our being. But the essence can never stray. That's a reality that is always bound up with the essence of God. It cannot be blemished. Tshuva means to return. It means you're returning to that core essence of you. That is a reflection of the core essence of God. Is that clear?
Yes.
Yeah, beautiful.
I just have that and I heard that the Rabbi defined the unity of Jewish people connected to God through Yechida. This is the part that totally unites us as one with Hashem.
Yep, that's what we're talking about here.
So the question is, if somebody actually doing tshuva, does that affect the whole unity of all the Jewish people? Or is it he is individual and what he does, it affects him alone? Or there is reverberation and effect of Shabbat in the global?
Absolutely, the reverberation. You're touching the essence of your soul. The essence of your soul is bound up with the essence of God and bound up with all Jewish souls. Right? And as a result, absolutely affecting not just yourself, but the butterfly effect. It reverberates and affects the entire world. Absolutely, no question about that. If the butterfly effect does, and then this for sure does. Yes, Bobby.
Why only Jewish?
Not just Jewish souls, actually. It reverberates to affect all Jewish souls, and from there reverberates and affects all humanity. In other words, there is a distinctive uniqueness of the bonding of Jewish souls that is unique, as October 7th has kind of clearly pointed that out to people who before, as so many people I have spoken to, being Jewish was not an important thing to them. All of a sudden they realize how invaluable it is and how it is a core identity of their being, right? Is their Jewishness. It's a core identity. And therefore and recognizing that all we have is each other ultimately. But yes, absolutely. It's just like our prayers, we pray towards Jerusalem because that's where they go up and that's where the blessings come down, is through Jerusalem, through the Jewish people to the entire world. And that's why we're a light unto the nations as a result. But you're absolutely correct. It doesn't just reverberate, to the Jewish people, but through the Jewish people to the entire world, right? And that's the uniqueness of the Jewish connection.
Those people who sense it, they have to be tuned in. There's a great bunch of people who don't.
No, absolutely. But it doesn't take away from the reality.
Right.
A reality is a reality, whether a person lives in that reality or not, right?
Right. There's
Right.
electromagnetic waves and radio waves, and if we're not tuned in, you can't hear them.
Exactly. So yeah, so I think that so we're talking about here to try and appreciate that reality. So Atzmus then, that we're connected to, that parallels the Yechid of our Neshama, it's a place where there is no blemish, where your identity is complete and whole. And I suggest what's happened October 7th to so many people, that the jolt that happened, it touched to the core and revealed that core in a way that perhaps never has been revealed before amongst the Jewish people, which is pretty awesome. Okay, let's get a little recap over here.
Welcome to our final episode on the world of Kabbalah. The mystical system stretches like a ladder. In our first episode, we began at its lowest rung and we climbed upward from there. So before we hit the climax, let's recap our previous steps. Lesson 1. We met the 3 basic layers of God's creation that range from terra firma to the spiritual extreme. Kabbalists call them 3 worlds of created entities: Asiya, Yetzira, and Beriah. What do they have in common? They sense their own identity, and they feel independent from God. We can relate to that all too well. Lesson 2. We rose beyond creation to meet the divine world of Atzilut, home to the Sefirot. The divinity of Atzilut is stamped with the limitations of defined characteristics. We cannot relate to such powerful divinity, but we can connect with its variety of characteristics. Lesson 3. We soared beyond Atzilut to meet Keter. That's a leap from divinity with limitations to God's infinite light. It's difficult for us to relate to God's infinity, but we learned why the infinite light is indispensable for our limited world. Lesson 4. We hit the peak of our ladder and discovered a debris field of a cosmic mystical explosion. During the pre-birth of creation, the intense but chaotic spiritual layer known as Tohu imploded, the effects of which still impact our reality today. Lesson 5. We met the ultimate mystery of creation. How does anything but infinity emerge from God's infinite light? That's where we discovered Tzimtzum, the cosmic process of contracting and concealing divine light to facilitate the emergence of all layers of existence. That was some ride. So what's missing? Well, we've discussed God's creation, its system, purpose, and relevance. We've also discussed God's transcendent divinity. But we haven't discussed God himself. There's a reason for that. God is off the charts. We plotted a path from the foot of the mystical system, that's us, all the way to the greatest divine revelation. But God's self, or Atzmut, the essence, that's beyond any revelation, description, or definition. God transcends all logic and rules, which are merely his own creations. So here's today's surprise. That's exactly what makes God himself most relevant. Why is that? Here's one reason. God designed us in his own image, which means that he gave us the ability, not provided to the rest of the rule-abiding system, to break the divine rules. And we do. We mess up. But where do we go from there? The system works by the book. We threw out the book, so the system won't let us back in. Thankfully, God himself, at his essence, is not bound by the rules he authored. He is free to revise or override at will. And God chose to connect our deepest core, the very essence of our soul, to his own essence. How does that help us? Because our desire to repair our relationship with God after messing up springs from our deepest self. It's the voice of our innermost soul. So when we reach into our deepest self to return to God's embrace, God does the same. He overrides his own system to provide us clemency and atonement. Our sincerity cuts through the cosmos, and God's reciprocating love cuts through his infinite light, the Tzimtzum, Tohu, Keter, Atzilut, Beriah, Yetzirah, and Asiya, to us. Now, if that's not absolutely relevant, nothing is.
Okay. Let's take this a step deeper. So relevance we found in the fact that Atzmos allows us to repair something that's broken. The system that he set in place, we can repair it, right? It doesn't work by the laws of nature, right? A catastrophe strikes, right? God forbid something happens, right? Nature takes its course. If you just buy into that's all there is but nature. Yes, God set that in order, but he defies that and allows us back. So when we speak about Atma, something that defies any definition, defies any description, any limitation, so it would seemingly be something very distant from us and something that doesn't move us in particular, right? But when we understand that Atmos is the source of everything and the ultimate cause of everything, and all of the secrets of creation all stem from Atzmos, we have something very paradoxical that comes out of this. Atzmos and us in this physical world, we share something that nothing else in the cosmos, nothing else in creation shares. And that makes us very relevant as a result. The first thing is, as ridiculous as it may sound, is that this physical world has a common quality to Atzmos. And what's that common quality? We feel our complete independence, right? As God does, right? God is completely independent, but we also feel that. The higher worlds don't feel that. Angels above, or souls in Gan Eden, they feel their source in the divine. They're a link in the chain, and they sense where they come from. They sense that they are not an end in themselves. They sense that they do emerge from a divine place. Let's look at text number 8, please. Rebbe's Mimer. The difference between the upper spiritual worlds and this material world of ours is that only the inhabitants of our material world experience their existence as entirely independent of any source. This is the difference between light and the created being. Light points to a source. When you see light, it exists. Its existence informs us that there must be a source of light. By contrast, a material creature does not indicate the existence of the creator. In fact, it actively conceals God's existence by projecting itself as an entirely independent existence. Only logic demonstrates the incorrectness of this natural perception. In truth, our existence is entirely dependent on God, and it is only our perception that generates a sense of independence. Nevertheless, the very fact that we imagine ourselves to be self-generated is because our source is Atzmos, the absolutely independent existence. Wow. So in fact, that's what makes this world unique. How does that occur? I mean, think about it. Everything else in creation comes by an order, Seder Hishtalshelus. Everything is connected. So this ring knows it's connected to a ring greater than it. This creation knows it emerges from something greater than it. But we don't come through this reality, this physical world. We come through something called Yesh Mi'ayin, something from nothing, a creation of an entity that does not intuitively sense and respect its source. That's how we come about. Now, obviously, what does it mean, something from nothing? Should be the other thing. We're nothing, and God's the real something. Right? In relation to God, right? In relation to the universe, we're a speck in the universe. But the universe is infinite physically, but that itself is a definition and a limitation. God, who's beyond that, we're not even a speck in the universe. So we're a nothing compared to him being the real something. But that's not how God created us. He created us something from nothing. Why do we refer to him as nothing? Is because we can't grasp, we have no experience of what that source is. And therefore we don't sense it, we don't feel it, we don't know it intuitively. We have to learn it. We have to learn it. Text number 9, please. The created entity is considered like nothing before him, meaning that it has no independent existence and is therefore utterly nullified before God. Nevertheless, that is only before him in God's perspective, as viewed with the truth that is available exclusively above. However, the perception from below, the created being's perception, is that it is an entirely independent creation. This is because the energy that flows into created entity is not understood or experienced by the entity at all. This is why we refer to creation as something from nothing. Right? We do not, to us, it's nothing because we don't experience our source. Right? We're not intuitively experiencing it. We are not understanding it intuitively. And therefore, it seems to be nothing to us. Because I'm the something. I am such a something that what I want matters. So much so that usually people, put aside other people as a result of that, right? Because I matter. But the ultimate truth is really, we're nothing. We're coming from the ultimate something, but that's God's perspective. In the higher worlds, they get it. The soul's there. The angel's there. They get their source, but not this world. Why? Because something from nothing. There, it's cause and effect. Linked chain reaction, but not this world. Text number 10, please. The very essence of the Creator, the ultimate independent existence that has no antecedent or cause at all. He alone has the exclusive power and ability to create an entity from the absolute and total nothingness. To the extent that he created an entity, senses that it has no cause or antecedent at all. So in that way, we're like God. Right? So where is the power of Atmos revealed? Not in the higher worlds, in the spiritual realm, but in this physical world. This is where it is, right? The more you feel that you're a something, right? Ultimately, the greater connection you have to Atmos. Text number 11. The soul is a product of the divine light, which is itself merely an expression of divinity. The soul, now, it's from divine light. It's an expression of divinity. Conversely, follow this. So counterintuitive. Everything we were learning today is counterintuitive. The body is created directly by God's essence, whose existence is absolutely independent. It has no preceding cause or antecedent at all. The soul recognizes that the body contains the above superiority. Because it longs to gain a similar advantage, it desires to bond with the body and its animalistic soul to guide them through a positive spiritual transformation. Wow. Remember, we spoke about this already. The body comes from a higher place than the soul. It comes ultimately from Atmos. Because that's what God chose. He wants that. The soul comes from God's light. Therefore, the soul feels nullified to its divine origin. The body doesn't. It senses its own origin. It feels it's an end in itself, as Atmos does. So the neshama recognizes this, therefore wants to engage with the body and the animal soul to sanctify it in order that it should feed off the special power that's inherent in the body. Is that clear? Very. Again, it's everything what we've spoken today is completely counterintuitive and very heavy. So, another thing that's counterintuitive, every other faith and every other religion, based on what we just learned, they're looking for the light. Therefore, where's the light? Beyond this world is a greater light. And therefore, they are working anything in this world just for the next world. Because there's a greater light there. But light means What? Not Atzmus. It ain't safe or Atzilus, whatever it is, but it's not Atzmus. Huh? Whatever, it's not Atzmus. It's not Atzmus. Right? And therefore, you're seeking something out of this world. So whether you're on a Tibetan mountain gazing your navel, whether it's you don't get married so you could be a holy roller, or whether it's forsaking this and forsaking that, or it's taking so you can get 72 Virginians in in the next world, because this world is meaningless, because the light is greater there. And it's true, the light is greater there. But that's not Atzmus. That's right. This language doesn't exist in other faiths and other religions, because they're only seeking the light. Because the light is glamorous, the light is glitzy, the light is tantalizing, a light of God. Atzmos is the essence. It isn't tantalizing. So much so that, what did we just express? What does God want? What is the expression of Atzmos? Is the physical world. And in me, it's the physical reality of me that is feeling its own inherent value as an end in itself. Independence. So the soul recognizes there's something so valuable there in that reality. The problem is, of course, that's going to take you off and bring you not light, but to darkness ultimately, right? That's what it's going to do. But when you harness that power that's there and guide it, then you can touch to the core essence of God himself, right? Which then brings us, what does God truly want, right? So now we know he doesn't want the higher worlds, because the higher worlds are great light of God and godliness, right? But that's not what he freely chose. What he freely chooses is this world, because it's an expression of him. All right? What's that, friend? Watch that. Let's follow this first, and then we can have a conversation. I want to make sure we get this clear, okay? Let's look at text number 13. There's a known statement. This is from Tanya. Chapter 36 from Tanya. There's a known statement of the sages that God created the world to enable the fulfillment of his desire for an abode in this lowest realm. Now, there is no higher or lower in God's presence, because he fills every realm of existence equally, right? As we explained earlier, there isn't higher or lower. Rather, the description of our world as the lowest realm can be understood by first appreciating that before creation of the universe, all that existed was God himself. The very space that the universe now occupies was entirely filled by God's presence. In fact, that remains the reality even now, from the truth of God's perspective, from his perspective, right? The change caused by creation is only in the perspective of the recipients of God's vivifying energy, because they receive this by way of multiple screens that dim and conceal God's light. From their perspective, this concealing process is referred to as Hishtalshelus of the worlds, meaning their devolution from each other via interlinked, progressively dimmer realities by way of countless steps of the concealment of the divine light and energy. This continues all the way until the creation of this physical, corporeal, tangible world of ours, the bottom of the entire chain. There is no lower realm in terms of the concealment of God's light. It is this world of incredible darkness, to the extent that it is filled with klippas that oppose God in actuality and claim that nothing exists beyond their immediate reality. The goal of the entire chain of interlinked realms of spiritual existence, and the purpose of their progressively steeper descents in terms of divine concealment, is not for any of those spiritual worlds. Rather, the purpose is to arrive at this lowly, tangible world, For it was God's original desire to derive pleasure from mortal efforts to suppress the forces of evil, to transform the darkness into light, until God's infinite light shines openly through the entirety of this world, their very habitat of the ultimate darkness and the forces that oppose sanctity. Wow. So this is the concept of what we call Dira B'Tachtenim, a home in the lowly realm. God's desire to have a home in this world fashioned by our doing of mitzvahs.
But in the text you just read, when it says mortal effort to suppress the forces of evil and to transform the darkness into light, now they're not talking about the Ein Sof light. They're talking about the
Light in this world, darkness in this world. There's darkness in this world. There's darkness in us. We have negativity in us, right? That's the forces of darkness in us. There's forces of darkness outside of us, right? To suppress that darkness and to even transform it into light.
But it would be ultimately transformed into the Ein Sof light, no? Like
No.
we're not trying
More to Atzmus.
Okay, that's what I wanted to know.
Atzmus, not more than
So
Ein Sof.
the higher.
But let's follow over here. So everything we learn and all the weeks up to today points to one place, right? Or Ein Sof we had Tohu, Tikkun, Keser, Atzilus, Biyah. The entire purpose of all of that order of things is because God's desire is down here in this physical reality, right? A place that's mitziyus, that it is a reality that we feel that we come from our own existence, right? That we are, nothing preceded us, we are the end all and be all. That's the darkness that we need to transform into light. That's what God's true desire is. That's the ultimate goal. Why is there Or Ein Sof? God needs Or Ein Sof? No. He doesn't need Or Ein Sof. Does he need Atzilus? No. He doesn't need it. He uses it only as a process of creation, because what he really desires is this world and you and I in this world that he places us over here. Not that we should gain a merit from being in this world and see this world as an entryway to the world to come, right? To Gan Eden, to the Garden of Eden. Again, every other faith, that's what every other faith and religion is about. And there is that element in Jewish teachings. There is Gan Eden, but that's not the ultimate point. The ultimate point is God wants a home in this world, right? How do we make that home? Through mitzvahs, right? Every time we take a physical object, whether it's tefillin, whether it's a mezuzah, whether Shabbos we make kiddush and we eat challah, right? Every time we take something of the physical world, right, which is ultimately a concealment on godliness, right, that doesn't cry out, this is God, from God. It doesn't. You look at it, and until you study, these teachings, you think of it as just an existence that, this rock might have been here for who knows how long, right? And likewise our very being. The whole point is that to make a home, not for the light of God, but for the essence of God. And that's the power of giving tzedakah, taking a coin and putting it into a pushka, lighting Shabbos candles, putting on tefillin and mezuzah, is that all of creation now is being fulfilled through that act, because all of Seder Ishtalshalos is only here for that purpose, because God himself doesn't need it. He only created that for us, that we can know him, that we can affect the above, and that ultimately that we will reveal Atzmus, the essence of God himself, through the power of the mitzvah. Is that idea clear? Yes. So why does God, when he desires tefillin, he desires the tefillin specifically, right? It's not on your forehead. It's here between your eyes. It's black boxes, not white or any other color boxes. It's specifically made this way, put on in a specific way. Why? Ultimately, because so he desired, right? Was he compelled? Nothing compelled him. But this is what he wants. So now, in the fact that this is what he wants, doesn't mean that he didn't, since it comes down through Seder Ishtalshalus, right? So it gains divine wisdom. It gains actually before that. What does it gain? Infinite light, right? Then it comes down through creation. What does it further gain?
Limited light.
Limited light. A limited light. So infinite light would mean today that we experience a divine connection. Finite light would mean that when you give charity, the Torah tells us that it's a vehicle to become wealthy. It's a vehicle to become wealthy by being charitable. By being charitable, it protects you from harm. It doesn't guarantee, but it protects you from harm. Like a helmet protects you when you're bicycle riding, right? Or when you're at war, it protects you. It doesn't guarantee, but it protects you. That's how the mitzvah then comes down through the order of things, right? And it will reflect itself in human things that we are familiar with, as expressed in Or Ein Sof, as expressed in limited divinity, right? And so on. But ultimately, what is it? A divine connection to the essence of God in the act of doing it. And with this, we have an odd and a peculiar thing. This is so unusual based on this. And bringing out the point. If someone were standing by a rally in Ottawa, for the anti-Semitism that there is in the world, and for they're supportive of Israel, and you ask that person to put on tefillin, he says, I'm going to McDonald's right after this. So you might think, what's the point of putting on the tefillin? So if you're speaking about the light of the Or Ein Sof, so there, he's not going to get the experience. And if he's going to, you're speaking about then the limited light of God that is in Atzilos, so therefore he might not get, that blessing that comes from the limited light of God. But in the act of doing the mitzvah, what do you have? Atzmos, a bond to the essence of God himself. Period. Now, will that lead to other things? Yes, because mitzvah leads to a mitzvah. But the reward of the mitzvah is the bond itself. And what's the bond? To the essence of God himself. This is so counterintuitive because we think about what is the gain from it. I'm going to McDonald's afterwards. What's the point of putting on tefillin now? Put it on. It's okay. Oh, so a person might think, put it on because maybe that will keep you away from going to McDonald's afterwards. Maybe, maybe not. And if it doesn't, in this moment, there's a connection. In this moment, you're rooted and bound with the essence of God. Is there the ripple effect? Absolutely. Could it be a stronger ripple effect if it also had the light of God, the infinite light of God, the finite light of? Absolutely, it could be much more stronger ripple effect. But it still has that bond. That is unique concept that just Jewett has a value.
It would be nice to have a pair of glasses that when you put them on, you'd see that connection appear. Wouldn't it be?
Yeah, it would be. And with this, we can appreciate that what the Alter Rebbe said. That he would say, I want nothing, God. I don't want your Garden of Eden. I don't want your Olam Haba. I don't want anything but you. The human condition is that everything is a means to an end, cause and effect. So naturally what we want is, what is this cause going, what kind of an effect will it have? So we're looking, what kind of light will it bring into my life, right? And there's a truth to that. Not in Atzmos though, because Atzmos is not a light. Atzmos is not infinite, not finite. It's beyond that. And what we need to remember, that when we engage in our Jewish life, is not just to look for the tantalizing experience that will speak to my soul and uplift me. But even in the moment of darkness where I'm not uplifted, just do the mitzvah. You don't feel like putting on tefillin? As that soldier who, after October 7th, a religious guy who went to and fought, and he saw what he saw. The next morning, he got up and he couldn't bring himself to daven, because davening is, to connect with the light of God. And then he opened up an Igros Kodesh, a teachings from the Rebbe, and the teachings was, he just randomly opened up a letter from the Rebbe, and the letter said, there's a video, you can see the video, you may have seen it already. It's already like almost 2 months ago. Tomorrow's 2 months. In any case, so he opens up and the Rebbe says, you may wake up in the morning and not feel like you are ready to daven. Oh my gosh, it's exactly the way he's feeling. So sometimes what you need to do is to recognize that maybe you're not ready, but you represent something more than yourself. You represent the Jewish people. So you not ready to daven, but the Jewish people that you represent, in fact, is ready to daven. So, oh my gosh, that gave him such an inspiration. He realized when we recognize that we are connected to each other, essentially. Why? Because we're essentially bound up to God, to the essence of God. And when we can touch that place inside of us, no matter what the situation is, or as Elie Wiesel in Night, and he says after they took God to court for the atrocities that have been committed to the Jewish people and to all of humanity. And they found God guilty. And you know what they said afterwards? Let's daven Mariv. It's time to daven. Just because our human mind doesn't get it, right? And from our human mind gets to what the human mind can get. But the mitzvah touches Atzmos. Our mind is limited, so therefore our mind, and based on what our mind understands, we will get what we get, and we will conclude what we can conclude. But we're bound up the core essence of God, and that is expressed by God's mitzvahs that he gives to us. Even deeper than that, when we don't do it, we can always repair that through tshuva. So what we always have to want is Atzmos, God himself. And to ask ourselves, what does God himself want from me in my life? I do this all the time when it's a difficult moment, feeling the darkness and not feeling the light. So I ask myself, God, what do you want from me now? And sometimes I need to sing a niggin to get me uplifted. Sometimes I need to learn some Torah that puts me in a different headspace, or daven, to allow me to try to find, to connect to what the core essence of God wants. But the bottom line, he wants us, and he wants our connection. And he wants our connection in this world through the physical act of a mitzvah. Let's go into the Nidyan and meditate upon everything that we've spoken about today. Okay. We sing that every Shabbos, by the way, here in the repetition. Oh boy. Okay, that's what I wanted. All right, folks. I just want to take a brief moment. There's so much stuff that we learned and heavy stuff. I want you to turn to page 210, please. The concluding exercise. I want you to take a moment and match the following human features with its corresponding layer of existence within the mystical system of devolution. So you have on the left side the attributes of the soul, thought, machshava, action, maise, speech, dibur, desire, ratzon, soul essence, yichida, animal soul, nefesh bahamis, and related to the corresponding on the right side. They're not one against the other, right? They're not in order. Atzmus or Ein Sof, Tohu, Sfiras, Atzilos, Bria, Yitzira, Asiya. Take a moment and do it in your book. Okay, you have your book, take a moment. You should be able to do it in 30 seconds. Huh?
could see.
Okay, yeah. Put on the lights. Thank you. Yes, we'll help you with that right now. Oh, here you are. Okay, 10 attributes. What is it? What's the corresponding? Right. Thought, machshava. Huh? Bria, correct. Action, maisa.
Speech.
Huh? Asiya. Is that what you said? Asiya, yes.
But
Huh?
speeches.
Well, I'm going in order. Let's go in order, please. Speech, dibur. What's it correspond with? Yetzira. Very good. Desire, ratzon. What is it? Huh? No, we did. We said asiya. Someone said it.
I think that they're switched around on our book than yours.
No, they're all switched around. Yeah.
No, they're switched around. I
So okay,
totally understand.
desire, ratzon. What does it correspond with? No. You need your book. You don't have your books here. Anybody? Or Ein Sof. Desire corresponds to Or Ein Sof. Soul's essence, Yechida. Atzmus, very good. Animal soul, Nefesh Bahamis. Tohu, right, very good. Very good. I want to make sure that you at least get the corresponding ideas over here. So, folks, I know that this has been not the easiest journey of our courses, but it was, for me, although the material is something that I'm very familiar with, but the way it was put together and how it was formed and going from level to level and each week seeing the progression, it was just, for me, it was extraordinary, and just makes much more clearer for me the whole process. Is this the first time you've used this book? Yes. Yeah, it's the first time. So the bottom line is, the Talmud tells us that Adam was created one and singular, while everything else in creation was created in a multitude. Right? When God created grass, he didn't create one blade. And from there came many blades of grass. Created trees, many different trees, right? Different species. And so animals likewise. Adam was one. One of the reasons, there's many reasons the Talmud gives, one of the reasons is a person has to say, Bishvili Nivra Ha'olam, that the world was created totally and only for me. Totally and only for me. Now that sounds like the height of egoism, right? Well, it could be. And we see, because of egoism and self-centeredness, how we can destroy a world, physically, spiritually, even more so spiritually. But the ultimate purpose is for me, because God created not just the animal kingdom and the vegetation and inanimate, that we should subdue this world and use it out in divine service of God. But he created everything from Asiya, Yetzira, Bria, Atzilus, Keser, Or Ein Sof, Tohu, everything just for me. For me, for what? Because I have to understand that I have total responsibility for the entire world. This physical world, the spiritual worlds above, I am totally responsible. Then when a mitzvah comes to my hand, got to do the mitzvah. When, God forbid, something that negative comes in my hand, I got to push it away. I have total responsibility. That's what the world was created. So that when the next time comes that I have an opportunity to do a mitzvah, you say, well, I have to do the mitzvah. Someone else will do the mitzvah. There's plenty of Jews that can do the mitzvah, right? No, the world was created for me. So I have the responsibility. I can't think about what anybody else is going to do. Imagine if everybody thought that way. Everybody will live that way. That all of the world was created just for me, and that's in fact created the world just for me, for the next opportunity to do a mitzvah. So I just want to give everybody an opportunity. We're on a campaign to adopt a hostage, do a mitzvah. There's still over 100 hostages. We've started a campaign and we're trying to make it worldwide. We're almost have the website up to that we can make this worldwide, that everybody can adopt a hostage and do a mitzvah for that hostage. You take this person. So we have people now, over 40 people that we've dealt with here. They've taken that person in their family, and they're doing it as a family effort to do a mitzvah for this person. They can't do a mitzvah right now. They can't put on tefillin. They can't give tzedakah. They can't put up a mezuzah or learn Torah. They can't do these things. But we could do that in their merit. So I invite everybody to please adopt a hostage and do a mitzvah, because a mitzvah connects us to the essence of God, and through that, the ripple effect that we'll have, God willing, will bring only good things to the hostages, to all of Am Yisrael, and through Am Yisrael, it will bring all the good to all of the nations of the world, and will bring ultimately to the final redemption of Mashiach now. Chaim, thank you very much. Any questions? Any thoughts? Yes.
I was thinking when you were talking about
At this point, anybody needs to leave, feel free. If you want to stay for more conversation, feel free.
Atzmut.
Huh?
What I was thinking while you were talking about what was Atzmut.
Yes.
I was thinking of creation, and I was thinking, therefore, God really wanted Plan B. He really wanted Eve to eat the apple, right? So that
Because what did she do by eating from? It wasn't an apple, by the way.
Yeah.
Right. What did Eve do, or Chava do, by eating from the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil? What did she introduce as a result of it? Anybody? One word. She introduced tshuva, a relationship to Atzmus. In the Gan Eden, it was delectable. It was amazing. The light of God. It was the light of God, but not a connection to the essence of God. It was not the right. They had to be kicked out of there. That was the remedy. By being kicked out, that gave them the opportunity to do tshuva. That's why one of the things that it says that they ate from a fig tree, because they ate figs. Because afterwards, what did they do? Take fig leaves to cover their nakedness. Meaning they remedied the sin that they did with it by now covering themselves up in there, because now they're aware of nakedness. Before, there was nakedness meant nothing, right? Because the light of God was so strong. Now they create a world where we can have a relationship to Atzmus and do tshuva, which that didn't, right? That's why getting kicked out of Gan Eden, even though getting kicked out, it sounds like a punishment, but in the end, it's the remedy that brings to the world a capability of tshuva. Thank you.
Thank you. No.
Thank you. Yosef. Huh?
Thank you, Rabbi.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you. Yes, Yosef.
Could they have done tshuva for touching the fruit as opposed to eating it?
Huh?
Could there have been tshuva for the touching of the fruit as opposed to eating it?
I mean, in fact, they ate it. There was nothing wrong with touching it. That's how the serpent got them to eat it, because he said, oh, you're not allowed to touch it. So, and then he pushed her, she touched it, and therefore she said, oh, I could touch it, so then I could eat it. Right? That's how the serpent played his cunning trick on her.
Could Adam have done tshuva for that?
They did tshuva. They did tshuva. Yeah, they did. Exactly. All right. Amazing. Thank you, folks. Thank you all. God bless you.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you. Thank you.